Alrighty, I think we're live. So, Guy, thank you for joining. This is the inaugural Mega Pod, and we've just given it that name because it's our very first session for one of these. So, you could be episode one. Hey, the reason I wanted you to jump on this call and have a conversation was I came across this incredible company called Latitude, and I came across that company because they were pushing the boundaries of what Megaport was actually offering. We just opened up 100 gig connectivity across one of our backbones. And then out of nowhere, we saw this connection appear. And then we started to see huge amounts of traffic pumping across it. And so that sort of came across my desk. And I was like, I've got to get my head around who this is and what this company's doing. And Guy, that's when you and I first connected. I think it was 11 p.m. my time because I was in Australia and the sun was coming up in Sao Paulo, where you are. And so we jumped on that call. I was like, what are you doing? What are you up to? And turns out that there's this company that's got access to a whole range of NVIDIA chips that you've been rolling out to, I've written down 22 locations across 5 different countries, delivering this GPU as a service model. And I know you've been around for 4 years, so you haven't just been doing this the whole time, but as I mentioned, I had our investor call yesterday and had a chance to chat to our shareholders and investors. And I can tell you right now, if you haven't figured it out, AI is a very hot space and everyone's trying to work out what's happening. And I think you're probably the most interesting example right at the tip of the spear for what's occurring globally right now from an AI perspective. And so I just wanted to chat to you because I thought it'd be helpful for not only me to learn, but also for our listeners and anyone else around the planet who's trying to get their head around what this AI movement is. So I think the first thing is maybe a quick introduction, CEO and founder of Latitude. Did you just want to say hi quickly and maybe a little bit about yourselves?
Yeah, thanks a lot, Michael, for having me in this first episode.
The first
Really,
ever.
yeah, really excited with that and the partnership that is coming together between Latitude and Megaport. We see Megaport as a strategic partner for us in multiple ways globally for our compute locations with Mega EX, which is something else that we are putting together on top of connecting multiple of our locations. But yeah, I am in this space for a little longer than 4 years. I founded my first hosting company in 2001 when I was 16 years old. Um, yeah,
Of
it
course.
was called MaxiHost, and we actually rebranded to Latitude 1 year and a half ago only.
Okay.
Yeah, before that we were MaxiHost, but it was founded in 2001 when I was 16, and I
Were you
rented
in
a
high school?
server.
Were you literally in high
Um,
school?
yeah, I was in high school. I always loved computer and technology, and did many other types of tried to do many other types of companies. Many of those failed. I have actually started my first business when I was 13 years old. The internet was pretty premature, so I am of the bullet board system age before the internet browser existed.
Wow.
Yeah. And yeah, and with this server that I hosted I rented a server in the US and started to provide email and host website hosting for small businesses and
Nice.
individuals that were looking to publish their content online. And that's how my cloud journey actually began. And I have pivoted the company many times from hosting to provide VPS, virtual private servers, and then to become a specialized bare metal computing platform that is built for developers. I have built a data center in Brazil. So up to 2019, we only had a data center in Brazil, and 4 years from now, it was when Latitude actually began expanding globally to outside Brazil. We began with 2 locations in the US, and just a step back and the why we have expanded globally. We were hosting many of gaming servers in Brazil from companies that were already using globally distributed infrastructure. So it made sense from these customers to use us in other locations like US, Europe, and Asia. But we began with the US, and it was quite successful, and we just continue expanding purely based on customer feedback.
And that's compute or bare metal at that point in time, or a mixture of,
Yes,
yeah.
correct. And
And presumably
that that
that's about latency, so the time. I assume it's all the different style of gaming consoles that are having, you know, I, my son loves Fortnite as an example, something like that that needs to be sort of delivered locally or close to each location around the world. Is that sort of the use case?
Absolutely, yes. Today we have 6 locations in the US covering East, West, and Central, and it's purely based on latency. So for many of the high performance use cases, 20 milliseconds or 10 milliseconds matters. So we have decided at that point in time to put our compute strategically on and as close as possible to the users. And we took a developer approach for bare metal. So we have tried to bring the same user experience that users have on hyperscalers with programmatically APIs where they can provision on-demand servers to bare metal. So we have 2 very different teams inside Latitude. We are a software company that builds the platform, the APIs, and then we are an infrastructure company. That what makes us really unique in the bare metal space,
I was going to say that's very
because
different to the traditional bare metal players who are basically, here's a bunch of compute, off you go. You're actually adding more of a full stack from a software perspective.
exactly we provide a great user experience and a pretty fast platform where users can get access to this compute either on a modern dashboard or programmatically. We don't just give the keys to the server inside the data center. We do more than that.
Awesome. It's actually a little bit how Megaport was founded. Everything we do is totally automated. And so the engineering team's passionate about building everything from an API perspective. I think for us, we're something like 2,000 plus devices in 850 data centers around the globe, and not a single human ever touches any of it. It's fun.
Yeah, I see many similarities with us, Michael. There are many, even in Brazil, I don't know a single platform that has the automation that you have. They are just provisioning network. Traditionally, you have to email the account manager. They go there to the data center, connect ports, give you access. You don't have a dashboard at all. It's pretty amazing what you're doing.
So I'm curious, and this is the piece that's so interesting right now is maybe you did predict that AI was going to just appear and change the world. And I mean, it's probably only, what are we, about a year and a half ago that sort of ChatGPT entered into the realm. And the world has just changed, actually. Well, our world has changed so much. The data centers have been exploding, connectivity is changing. But what's been so fascinating is this NVIDIA play around getting access to these chips and this rush to sort of train something, train a model, and then deliver inferencing. And for us, what we're seeing is movements of data to platforms like yours. And as I said in the opening, when the reason I came across you was because there was just so much traffic being pumped across this link. And I thought, well, who could be possibly using something like this? And so I'd love you to share how you went from bare metal to this NVIDIA world, this sort of GPU as a service offering.
Yeah, and from a traffic perspective, LLMs and machine learning workflows is really data in movement, and they are all constantly downloading, uploading the data sets, and they are pushing a lot of bandwidth across locations, and that's probably what caught your eyes on the
Yeah.
from the network, right?
There's not
And
many companies
yeah,
that are punching that sort of traffic. It's impressive.
it's
Yeah.
crazy. We are pushing more than 1 terabit of egress as of today, which is quite
Insane.
visible amount of bandwidth.
Sure.
uh,
Yeah.
yeah, we actually I didn't predict, to be honest, but like everyone else, what caught our eyes on the AI space was the ChatGPT when they
Mm.
actually turned these ultra powerful large language models into a chatbot, and we were already in the compute space, and we are getting massive amounts of requests from users. They want to use our platform to get access to GPUs, and I have started exploring, and we have set up a bunch of H100 cards in 2 locations, in the US, in Dallas and Frankfurt, and it was quite successful. We used the same platform, the same developers that platform that we provide compute to extend to GPUs,
Mm.
and users can deploy H1 programmatically on demand, just pay for what they use from clusters of 8 H100, the A100, the L40S, that is quite powerful for inference models. We are seeing unprecedented demand from GPUs. And what is most interesting is that as we have a platform that provides both GPUs and CPUs, we are seeing a lot of customers, their GPU, their AI workflows using CPUs as
Mm.
well. I see a lot of specialized GPUs platform, but that don't offer the CPU. So
Yeah, that's
many
interesting.
of these users are using both. So it's
That's
been
really interesting.
pretty cool. Yep.
Well, we've also, I mean, we see this a lot. We see different cloud providers, we've seen different data centers actually try to deliver different services. We saw a number of folks that came out with sort of this in theory that they were going to build GPU as a service, but ended up, it was probably too hard to build the as a service piece, which is like you bring all the storage in, you then use it for a period of time, and then you can sort of pull it back out. And so what they ended up doing was just selling the GPUs for like a 1 to 2 year period to a company, which is not really as a service. It just ends up more as like almost like an outsourced GPU farm. But in your case, and I think maybe it goes to the software side of your house, is you've actually built number of different ways to access the GPUs. You were sort of explaining it to me that you could actually run it, maybe it's like containerized or something out of some of the Git farms or whatever it was when you and I were first chatting, and you can sort of push to that, or you can. The other piece that I think was really interesting, you can send a whole heap of data to a storage farm next to your GPU farm. So sort of fill up that storage with all this information that you want to then train them. The GPU is that. How does that work? Like this is such an interesting space. No one sort of gets it, but can you sort of articulate how that comes to be?
Yeah, I think we just going back from the on demand. I would like to make a point there, and it's a nightmare to build hourly billing or metered billing actually. And when ChatGPT came out, we were already well positioned because we had that for CPUs. So we
Mm.
just had to extend to GPUs. We didn't have to make
Build from scratch.
meaningful changes to the
Yeah.
billing structure, and it's quite challenging. We had it was over a year to make that work correctly, and then we already had that. We just plugged the GPUs, and so today you can go to the platform and do and get hourly billing for multiple clusters, which is quite unique. And we are going one step further with Launchpad, which is a container orchestration
Mm.
platform that you mentioned,
Yeah.
and we are building per second billing. As most of these users that are deploying Docker images from both public or private repositories, they want to spin up a Docker, and when they don't have demand for that application, they just kill, and they don't want to pay for a full hour every time they do that because it's pretty dynamic. So we are coming out with second billing for Launchpad, which is the Docker orchestration platform. And we look to build serverless as well, which is functions of machine learning. Customers would just use APIs to call functions to GPUs, so they don't have to manage infrastructure
Mm.
at all. On the storage side, we have built storage in-house based on open source SAF, and we build this distributed storage to give access to our users of GPUs to store the models, so they don't have to
Bring them back.
download this big data sets from the cloud every time.
Yes.
So
And they
they
just
can connect.
it's just the incremental changes every time they want to retrain the model. Is that the theory?
Correct. Yes.
Yeah. So for the folks watching, and this is my take of it. So basically, you're in a few different locations. You've got these big GPU farms sitting here, but next to them you have a whole range of storage. And so if I'm trying to take all my data from a cloud provider, for example, or even on-premise data center that's not where you're located, you're moving all of this data across the network, and then you're sitting it in this big storage warehouse, so to speak. You're not sitting it inside your GPU platform, which is expensive. You're sitting it next to it, and what I would say is probably a much lower cost solution. And then when you need it, you're feeding it into the GPUs itself, training a model, and then leaving the data there so that a customer could then, they get updated a month later, they get updated financial information or whatever it may be. They can update the storage that you've got locally just with the changes, and then you can feed a model again and retrain. Is that how this sort of plays out?
Yes, exactly. That's pretty much like that, Michael. And the beauty of these file systems built locally is that we enable our users to connect the GPUs, the CPUs, and the Dockers that they have to the same file system at the same time.
Yes.
So yeah,
Fascinating. So it's kind of like what you've been building since you were 16 has been leading up to this AI revolution, and you've got down now to per second, but also the fact that you did the compute, that you had the storage ready to go, all those elements, you're actually being able to offer what is a much more full suite. The really interesting piece is where you're going with like containerizing, which I think is a more even sort of next level phase, which is really exciting as well. So what are you seeing in terms of customers understanding what they're doing with AI yet? Obviously, you're seeing traffic come in, so obviously they're doing something with it. And you may not even know what they're doing in there, but have you got any insight as to sort of how it's playing out right now? Are they massive data sets, small? Any insight into what you're seeing?
there are many enthusiasts and people playing with the LLMs. So last week, Llama 3 came out. So we saw many deployments and people trying to fine tune this model and playing with it. And we see surge in demand, and then people just kill the GPUs, and then they train again. But we see other use cases which are pretty consistent. We have a customer from sports analytics platform, Vision. So they do analytics of a soccer,
Mm.
football at a real time.
Wow.
So they can calculate how long the ball went from one player to the other in real time using machine learning. It's fascinating. Yeah.
The use cases are crazy. Like it really opens your eyes. Doesn't go anywhere.
Yeah.
I mean, what you
Yeah.
guys need to figure out is the AI trading platform to make sports bets for who's going to score the next goal and come automatically. Yeah, there's so many use cases. Mm.
Yeah, that'll be pretty cool.
So what? So why would someone use your GPU platform? Like, why wouldn't we just, if I'm a customer and I just decide, wouldn't I just use an existing cloud provider? What's the difference between, like, what's my value proposition for me?
Having access to these GPUs on Latitude as opposed to hyperscalers, NVIDIA seems to not be providing chips to hyperscalers as they are building their own chips, right?
That's a really
And
interesting. I mean, we'll unpack that
yeah,
a little bit, but yeah.
and NVIDIA has this framework, call it CUDA, which is highly adopted by the developers globally. It's
Mm.
by far the framework that is used across most of the developers. So we have this inventory available, and cost is a big factor as well. And when you factor cost of the compute, we have 1/5 of the cost of the compute
Wow.
compared to the hyperscaler,
Wow.
and
That's
and
huge.
then the bandwidth is crazy as well. We are 1/10 of the cost of the bandwidth. So
Is that an
cost can
egress
be,
egress sort of situation? As in is that when you say the bandwidth?
yes,
Yeah.
correct.
So that's
Yeah.
egress is basically, for the folks listening, is basically the cost to remove or extract the data. Is that what becomes the challenge in some of the hyperscalers?
Yes, when you were doing inference at scale, you were serving these models to the world, right? And you
Mm.
were outputting data
So
and
every
using
time
egress
someone
fees.
accesses it, every time someone's going to access inference, which is what you need, there is a charge in effect. So that's one
Ex- ex-
component, and then the other 1/5 the cost from the actual GPUs themselves. I mean,
Yes.
that's a pretty good value proposition.
Yeah. And also having the ability to provision a cluster on demand is something that not many other providers are doing. They usually provide access to single GPUs, which are usually in different cabinets or data centers. And it gets a bit complicated to train small, medium models. We
Mm.
provide a full cluster, so you can use eight H100 cluster and use the power of interconnectivity from these GPUs. And you don't have to commit for a year for that.
Mm.
You're just paying by the hour.
Amazing. And then
Yep.
eventually by the second with your containerized piece, which is next level. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
fascinating. And for us, what I loved about our engagement was I think you and I caught up, and then Maddie caught up, and then I went to sleep and then had a weekend, and I came back on Monday, and you guys had provisioned connectivity to Megaport, or at least ports access to our 2,600 customers, and our 850 data centers could access you by the time I got in on Monday, which I think was in eight different locations. And I every time I come on, there seems to be more locations. So, like, our perspective is we want to be an on-ramp provider to you like we are to any other cloud provider. And the focus for us is constantly giving our customers choice. And particularly in this space, it is moving so fast. So, thank you for the partnership, and we appreciate how fast you move. I'm impressed at how quickly you've actually not only delivered all of the platforms that you've delivered, it certainly makes sense having now discussed with you the fact that you've been building this since you were 16 and everything sort of beautifully led to this moment. But it's exciting. What do you see? What do you see for the future? What is sort of, I mean, a year and a half ago, we wouldn't have been having this conversation, but yeah, it's changed a lot. So where are you headed? Are you growing more? Is there more locations? What's the future for Latitude?
We are likewise. We are really happy with with this partnership, Michael. Megaport is the combination help us in a lot of ways connecting to Megaport. We are strategically putting compute in some data centers where we have the cost of power and access to large amounts of cabinets all together, which is getting pretty complicated in carrier hotels. So we are using Megaport to connect our telecom pops to compute pops. And we plan on doing that in many more locations where Megaport is available. On top of that, we are excited with the Mega IX. Many of our use cases are super sensitive to latency, as we discussed it in the beginning. So having access to local providers directly without going through multiple paths is pretty important for us. And using the same port with Megaport, it helps a lot.
We
And
were
yes,
impressed. Well, firstly, we saw that connection in Miami that spun up, and then that thing was, you know, pumping traffic. And then the IXs, when we saw you connect to the internet exchanges, again, we saw huge traffic throughputs, which is usually takes time for that to occur, but we just saw that almost instantly every time you've sort of jumped on. And that's always been the value prop for Megaport. It's one port, you can use it to connect to an IX, connect to a cloud provider, connect to your on-premises, connect to a data center, doesn't really matter. Which is what, when we look at you in the portal and our customers, and for any of the customers listening, you can jump inside the portal and you can connect through the marketplace to Latitude, basically one VXC straight to Latitude from wherever you are. Now, interesting on our side, we're rapidly upgrading our backbone networks to 400 gigs so that we can add 100 gig connectivity from just ideally as many locations as we can around the planet. Not just for yourselves, but obviously every customer. But this use case, which is AI, is really so surprising, the amount of traffic throughput that you are having. So it's one of the biggest use cases for us to see tremendous amounts of traffic. So yeah, we're all in. Wherever you land, we'll just follow. So you just let us know where you need us.
yeah, thank you.
And it will be great to see how customers leverage the platform. One other question I had for you, which is around, you mentioned the data centers that you end up rolling out. We know that heat and power is like a huge component to these GPU. I know that they burn hot, so they're churning through some power and heat. Are you hitting limits of what data centers can provide you? Do you have to look at the styles of data centers that you land in? Are you getting to sort of liquid cooling? Where's that sort of progressing to?
These data centers that are they're dense in connectivity, they are going through issues of power capacity. So a couple of them started to pushing us to migrate workloads, and this is something that we don't like to do. So we started to look at alternative data centers, actually still tier 3 certified data centers, but more focused on compute. And as a counter, they are not as well as connected as the carrier hotels. And that's where Megaport comes in, that enables us to connect both data centers in a redundant way. We don't have to manage multiple providers. We can do all that through Megaport. And GPUs uses a lot of power. It's insane compared to CPUs.
Yeah.
We used to put 40 physical CPU systems in a single cabinet. For GPUs, there are cabinets that we put 2 or 3. So
Wow.
they
In
use,
a whole cabinet.
two clusters, right? Two
Okay.
or three clusters, which is 24 total GPUs
Okay.
running in a full cabinet.
What does that look like? What's the size?
Each GPU is usually for
Okay.
you.
Got it.
Yeah. And most of these, there are these specialized data centers that are providing us with high density cabinets, which not many of the data centers can provide us. So we are building three-phase circuits where
Uh-huh.
where we are able to put six or seven, even seven clusters, which makes a lot of difference on scale, right?
Totally. And so I'm assuming not all DCs can provide that at the moment. I
Yeah.
mean, I mean, what we're hearing is that DCs are either at capacity in many cases, and and they're having to build new data centers. But a lot of it is they're at capacity from a power perspective, or they can't provide the cooling, or it's kind of an interesting space. So we're seeing lots of investment, and it's all future investment. They're building now, sort of 2 to 3 years out. But there's obviously data centers that you've landed in that can provide you what you need today.
Yes. Yeah, we will have to manage that until all these data centers get ready, right?
When do you go and
It's been
build it?
challenging.
When do you go and build a data center at the bottom of Antarctica or something? Keep it nice and low power, low cooling. Does it get to
It's
that point? Is there a value proposition for building a DC in a very low cost power country and then actually moving traffic there to train, or is it you're not? It's not really at that point. It still makes sense to keep it local, say in the US.
it will definitely make sense for companies that are building these big farms of AI, right? That'll be another play that could be interesting.
Yeah,
We're not there yet.
no, I get it. No, that's cool. All right. Well, did you have anything else you'd like to share?
Yeah, we are. You asked about the what you're building next, and we are really excited with building this future of the internet. So we are investing a lot in markets that are trying to disrupted. So we are pretty much into blockchain use cases. Many of the We are hosting many of the high throughput blockchains,
And that's a
and
crypto story, or
yes,
yeah, yeah.
correct, yeah, and also AI. So we are coming out with a new hardware line which uses new CPUs, new architecture, and we are always trying to be ahead and provide the latest compute possible to power the innovation of
Mm.
these on these markets. So we are using the latest AMD and
Mm.
Intel chipsets and really excited what people will build with that on our platform.
And is each chipset relates to a different style of compute requirement or GPU requirement. I.e., Bitcoin is different, for example, and is processed on a different platform. And then you've got AI, which can use different GPUs. But then there's obviously inferencing, and then you've got other crypto platforms that I think can use different platforms. How hard is it to manage all the different hardware that you need to deliver for each of these specific use cases?
We try to think of how we can provide the least amount of different compute possible to cover most, like
Use.
95% of the user cases that they would like to use Latitude. So we have in this new generation, we have about only six different hardware specs,
Mhm.
but it can cover a lot of use cases that uses high throughput bandwidth and that are CPU intensive. So it goes from only 32 gig of RAM up to 2 terabytes of RAM, and
Wow.
different and from 2 terabytes of NVMe up to 32 terabytes of NVMe. So we are covering a large set
Yeah.
of use cases, and we standardize this compute across across the globe. So it
And is this
becomes
all on demand? All
all on
billed,
demand.
yeah, billed by an hour or per second in some cases. That's
Correct.
fascinating. Yeah.
Yeah. We have another product called Build, where we customize hardware for a specific use case. But all of these compute that we have, the 6 different compute,
Mhm.
we provide those on demand in all of these locations. Um, we are launching Singapore as well, and excited to connect with Megaport there. And it's a location where it hosts many of these disruptive workloads. We are pretty excited with this location, and with Singapore, we are going to cover the majority of the. We will be close to like 90% or more of the internet users.
I was going to say, so you're seeing, where are you seeing the most demand? Is it obviously, I presume it's the US today, but obviously Asia, I think you had Japan as well, potentially Australia. How is it all sort of playing out I think more from the GPU side?
Europe is of high demand. There are not many GPU offerings there, and companies that are located in the EU, they cannot host data outside of
Sovereign.
EU
Yeah,
due
that's
to
what we
the
thought.
regulation,
Mm.
and there are not many compute offerings as we have in the US. But
Mm.
US, it's pretty hot as well. And from Asia Pacific, we see a lot of demand in Tokyo.
Yeah, I saw that. So from our side, we love having you as a partner, as a customer. We're super excited about your growth. We'll be wherever you turn up. So how could a Megaport customer access Latitude? What's the process? I'm assuming they just jump on your website and make magic happen. Is that the easiest way to do that?
Yeah, our sign up is pretty seamless. We try to remove the friction of the platform, so we don't require KYC at all. The customer just go there, put a credit card valid, and in 3 minutes they can spin up the machines. And if they are running on a hyperscaler, they can go to Megaport portal, connect to our infrastructure in locations that we are enabled, and extend the resources from the hyperscalers to back to Latitude.
And
It's
so
it's
that
pretty seamless.
you'll see what we expect to see is, say, someone's got a whole heap of data that could be in a cloud provider. They'll pull that out potentially across Megaport, land in your storage, train your model, leave it back in the storage. Inference, what do they do with once they've trained the model? What happens from there?
They can use resources from the multiple clouds, right? So they can use if they are use it to S3, they can extend the private network from S3 to Latitude Compute and train and then push back data to S3. And
Yes.
when they do that through using Megaport, they are saving a lot in terms of data transfer as they are not using the public internet. They are doing much faster as they don't have to use the multiple paths. It's connect directly with the hyperscaler, and the latency is also pretty much different.
It's perfect. It's a great use case for us. That's why.
Yeah.
That's why it's perfect. It's funny because you're spinning up some pretty complex stuff in 3 minutes. Everything we try to do is in 60 seconds. So as long as we're not slowing you down, we'll become I think we're a great partnership. So hey, look, we could chat forever, but what you've built is clearly impressive. I can see how it's come from, when you started your business at 13 and then ended up in 16 to go and build this out. And the world's changing so fast, but huge respect to you for actually doubling down, obviously extremely early when this AI revolution sort of took hold, and getting access to NVIDIA, then building the models, deploying them in all these different locations, and having it ready for the world when it needed it. You know, that's an entrepreneurial spirit right there. So massive respect to what you've been doing. So yeah, really impressive. And I think anyone listening will love to watch the Latitude journey. And obviously, if anyone's interested in using Latitude, jump on their website. It's latitude.sh is the website, and it's very slick. I was checking it out, and you can go and look at all the H100s and whatever's available, and whatever other compute platforms you decide to add to it. And I'm sure the next NVIDIA chips will end up there as well at some point in all these different locations around the world. So thank you for the partnership. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much, Michael, for having me. It was a pleasure talking to you and looking forward to collaborating more with Megaport.
Love it. Cheers.